Good evening, Akshita.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Prashant. Good to
How
see
are you,
you.
sir?
I'm okay, as you can see. Attendance to this class is like the falling rate of profit that Marx talked about. Hmm. Hey, no barking. I said no barking. Shut up. Good evening, Charani. Good evening, Prushni. Maya, please don't make them make this noise.
I didn't know he was going to do that.
So shall we get going?
Yes, sir.
Somebody tell me what we were doing the previous time. Hmm? Quickly, quickly. Tudor Dynasty, the emergence of Anglican Church. Bang on. Great. That's nice. So I was telling you the story of how the Tudor Dynasty how the Tudor dynasty basically changed the course of the history, not just of England, but it changed the course of the history of the world. That is what you need to remember. It changed the course of the history of the world. And what you find is that it is all because of a personal whim. It's not like somebody set out to go and change the world. No. It was just a personal whim that one of the kings had. And as a result of that, you see that Protestantism became a powerful phenomenon. It became an extremely powerful phenomenon, and it basically overtook Roman Catholicism. And I'll come to this argument in a minute. Sorry. The argument that was given by Max Weber. Max Weber basically talked about the Protestant ethic. So before we go into the Protestant ethic, there are a few things that we need to clarify. There are a few things that we need to understand, and then we can go into the Protestant ethic. When I was talking to you about Aristotle, if you remember, I told you that Aristotle wrote 2 books on ethics. One, which is the Nicomachean Ethics, which was named after his father, from whom he learned a lot of ethics. And then there was Eudemus, his student, who influenced him so much, that he wrote a separate book called Eudemian Ethics. Of course, you have to remember Aristotle never wrote a book. These are all people remembering what Aristotle said, going back and documenting them. None of the so-called books that we see of Aristotle are those which have been written by Aristotle. In fact, excuse me about this, having a throat problem. In fact, if you look at Aristotle, no, what was I saying? Yeah, these were written by his students, and I told you he believed in the peripatetic mode of education. So they walked around. The Lyceum is nothing but peripatetic, or walking around. So now the question is, when Aristotle is talking about ethics, he is talking about ethics as morals. Okay? He basically looks at ethics as morals or morality. They are interchangeable. In fact, for the Greeks, if you look at science and philosophy, both of them mean the same. They use them interchangeably. Today, thanks to Auguste Comte, we have this idea that philosophy is speculative. It isn't so. It isn't so. I hope you remember today morning's class where I had told you that a number of things, okay, have changed in the modern period. Their definitions have changed in the modern period compared to the Greek period. So, thanks to Auguste Comte, philosophy has become speculative. But if you look at philosophy, which is what I was telling you in the morning, philosophy is nothing but the study of the world. And philosophy is not antithetical to methodology. Philosophy is a methodological study of the world. So, which is what science is. So, for the Greeks, these two words were interchangeable. Now, if you look at, sorry, if you basically look at ethics, ethics and morals meant the same thing to the Greeks. Not just the Greeks, they meant the same thing to a number of people meaning people in the Greek civilization. And later on, you will see that there was a slight change in the meaning of morality, and this change was carried out by the Christians, by the Christian thinkers. Now, if you're looking at the Christian thinkers can be organized into various schools of thought. Okay. They can be organized into various schools of thought, and you can see for yourself that there were these early people who called themselves the Neoplatonists, because Plato, the whole philosophy of Plato is based in ethics. So there was this whole idea of incorporating Plato or ideas of Plato into the study of the church, the Christian church, and that led to this whole thing called Neoplatonists. Then there was another set of people who suddenly decided or who suddenly found that Aristotle, if you want to know Neoplatonists, St. Augustine is the Neoplatonist of consequence. There'll be several other people, and there's no point in talking about them. Now, if you're looking at St. Thomas Aquinas, about whom I'll be talking to you in greater detail in the Western political science class, there you will find that St. Thomas Aquinas found Aristotle to be more moral than Plato. So you have the neo-Aristotelian school of thought within the Christian thinkers, one of whom, the most prominent of whom, when it comes to Aristotelian thinking, is St. Thomas Aquinas, Aquinas. So, if we are looking at St. Thomas Aquinas, why did St. Thomas Aquinas gravitate towards Aristotle? A brief answer for that would be that Aristotle is a teleological thinker. A teleological thinker is one who has a teleology, which is they believe that we don't determine the goals of our life. We don't determine the goals of our lives. The goals of our lives are predetermined. And Aristotle talked about the ultimate end. Let's come back to that term, politeia. Okay, it's not just Plato who used politeia. Aristotle used it even more powerfully. Politeia is good life. Good life is living your life ethically. Ethically. But when this particular concept came into the hands of St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas gave it a completely different twist. he made it a Christian concept. The Christian concept was that good life, okay, leading a good life, which is what Aristotle was talking about in Politeia. The interpretation, he reinterpreted it, St. Thomas Aquinas, and said good life is pious life. Leading a pious life is basically what he believed was a good life. You know what is a pious life? Living according to the diktats of religion. So the Neo-Aristotelians were people who used the ethic component of Aristotelian philosophy in conjunction with his idea of the telos, which is the furtherance of good life, and they played around with this and they said good life is living a virtuous life. So when they talked about a virtuous life as such, virtue, VIRTUE, sorry, when they were talking about a virtuous life, what were they basically talking about? They were talking about living your life as per what is written in the Bible. Okay? Living your life as per what is written in the Bible. I hope you remember what I told you this morning. As far as the Christians are concerned, this world is only 7,000 years old. Just 7,000 years. They believe that before that there was nothing. God created this world 7,000 years ago. Anyway, so they basically took this position that good life is leading a virtuous and pious life. Now, virtue in the Greek sense of the term is excellence. If you excel in something, then you are considered to be virtuous. And I keep repeating this example that this particular usage still exists only in one particular field, which is music. When, say, a Yehudi Menuhin performs his first ever concert in the Royal Albert Hall at the age of 6, people said he's a violin virtuoso, which means he excelled in playing the violin. So that meaning is still there in just this small little context. But otherwise, the Christian thinkers conveniently converted the whole idea of virtuous life as living according to what was written in the scriptures. What was written in the scriptures. You have to live your life according to that. Okay? So they changed the meaning completely. And by then, Christendom had started dominating. So you see, there is a change completely. The moment you make ethics, you make them synonymous with virtue, then they cease to be ethics. They become morals. Why? Because ethics are negotiable. Ethics are absolutely negotiable. What is ethical to you need not be ethical to someone else. Okay? What is ethical to one person need not be ethical to someone else. So, ethics and morals ceased to be the same thing. They ceased to be the same thing. Ethics became those that were derived out of a social ethos, this worldly, if you must know. They became this worldly. Whereas morality became a transcendental category. What is transcendental? When you say Gandhi transcended the criticisms that were leveled against him, what are you saying? You are saying that Gandhi rose above. Gandhi rose above the criticisms that were being leveled against him. And you should know Ramana Maharshi, the great, he said this of Gandhi. He said, what makes Gandhi a great man is his moral life. And what is his moral life? His moral life is he will live his life as per morals, not ethics, morals, but not Christian morals, but socially generated morals. We'll talk about this in detail later. Socially generated morality. He only fought for what he thought was right. He fought for what he thought was right. He did not anticipate results. He did not change his strategies depending upon results that were coming from various people. So let's look at one thing. Okay, if you look at the Chauri Chaura incident, you're familiar with that, I hope. The Chauri Chaura incident was where a mob went and set fire to a police station, and several policemen perished in that fire. At that particular time, what did Gandhi do? Gandhi said, I am suspending the freedom movement. He said, we don't want a freedom that is based in the shedding of blood. We want a freedom that comes with non-violence. That's what he said. So, if you look at Gandhi, Gandhi didn't want freedom for Indians at any cost. For him, the primary thing was morality. The primary thing was morality. Everything else was secondary or tertiary. Now, when we talk about the Protestant ethic, which Max Weber, the sociologist, talked about, what are we saying? Please excuse me. Sorry. Okay. When we are talking about the Protestant ethic, the ethic is no longer, it is no longer morality. It is a certain social practice, generated by historical events. That is the Protestant ethic. So let's try to understand these historical events. The historical events, I'll cut them short. King Henry the VIII, the Tudor king, was married to the Holy Roman Emperor, who was the Spanish Emperor. Her name was Catherine of Aragon. He was married to her, and unfortunately, Henry died. Henry the VIII, he died. He died without any children. So that basically brought his brother, who also took on the name of Henry, and he became Henry the VIII. Now, most of what you see in this world, colonialism, capitalism, all are things that you can attribute, that you can trace back, not attribute. You can trace back to King Henry the VIII, because what did Henry the VIII do? Henry the VIII essentially decided that he didn't want Catherine of Aragon as his wife, because the practice among the Tudor dynasty was that if a brother dies without heir, then the younger brother not only inherits the throne, he also has to marry the same woman that his elder brother married. Now, for whatever reasons, Henry the VIII didn't want to have anything to do with Catherine of Aragon. He claimed that she was barren, that she was not conceiving a child. So he said, I want to marry this lady, a commoner called Anne Boleyn, A-N-N-E, Anne, B-O-L-Y-E-N-E, Boleyn. I would suggest that go to YouTube and see this film, which is called Anne of a Thousand Days. It will tell you the story of how Henry used the Reformation not only to create the Anglican Church, not only to create an alternative authority to the Roman Church, but also how he used a lot of power by co-opting the parliament with him. When he was going against the Pope, then he needed the support of the parliament. Before the Reformation itself, Henry the VIII approached the Pope and said, I want to marry this lady, Anne Boleyn. It was up to the Pope to give permission to the king to marry somebody or not to marry somebody. Now the Pope came under pressure from the Spanish emperor, whose daughter Catherine of Aragon was. whose daughter Catherine of Aragon was. So, what do you see? You see a denial, a complete denial of any right to marry Anne Boleyn by the Pope. Now, while Henry was engrossed in this battle with the Pope, trying to tell the Pope that he needed to get married to Anne Boleyn, the Reformation happened. And when the Reformation happened, Henry the VIII showed how astute he was. He showed how astute he was, grabbed this opportunity and converted the whole of England into Protestantism, created the Anglican Church with himself as the head. No religious person till today is the head of the Anglican Church. It is the king or the queen, whoever it is, who is the head of the Anglican Church. So he made himself the head of the Anglican Church. And this has a number of, what should I say? It has a number of fallouts because the churches had a lot of property. By becoming the head of the Anglican Church, Henry the VIII had all the properties of the church at his disposal. But he couldn't use it on his own. He needed the support of the House of Lords. So he co-opted the House of Lords into this process of converting the, what should we say, the church into something that is his subordinate. So he reached a number of agreements about how he and the other members of the House of Lords would rule, split the money. So that is how the Protestant ethic came into being. The Protestant ethic is nothing but the generation of a new way of life, a new way of looking at the world, and changing what was traditionally upheld in the world. Stop here. Tomorrow, when I meet you, I should explain the Protestant ethic in greater detail. How it works, how it became the basis for capitalism, how it became basis for the emergence of nation states. We'll look into that. It's an innocent sounding phrase, Protestant ethic, but it played havoc with Europe. So thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow evening for this class. Tomorrow morning, I will be coming for your Western political thought class. And we will continue with that. There will be a few overlaps, but it doesn't really matter. Yes, Swapna, you put your hand up. Swapna? You put your hand up. Well, no. Swapna is not responding. All right. So see you tomorrow. Okay then.